Okay. So Zoe, what was your interest piece?
So I think it was Rose that mentioned.
You're back.
You got us. I think it was Rose that mentioned earlier about people who are put on universal credit. It's sort of no longer necessarily getting housing benefit, and therefore they fall outside of the criteria. And I was just thinking, Andy, about the work that Sustainability First and CSE did for you, where you had relative to the rest of the country as a result of COVID, you had much higher numbers of people going on to universal credit. So I was just wondering, how do you then make sure that those groups that have increased in size, that are struggling as a result of COVID, are still captured? And is your definition going to still capture them? That was a kind of open question, really.
Well, what I was actually referring to, Zoe, was clients that we see at Citizens Advice, well, we don't see, we talk on the telephone to now mainly, where they are perhaps in work, also on universal credit, but don't meet the council tax support criteria. So they would be between the devil and the deep blue sea, really. They're just sitting on that line of toppling into a debt situation, and I have spoken to 3 clients recently who I've asked them to actually get their water bills out, so that they could tell me what their last bills were, and were absolutely amazed to find they were actually on the social tariff. They didn't remember applying for it, and I'm wondering if some of these are those put on, that have been sent over through the data share with Masonborough Council, because the problem is my clients don't open all their letters. Sometimes they don't open any letters until they've actually got support on the telephone. And I'm just thinking, how many people are actually on social tariff who don't know they are, and how many people who are on universal credit aren't aware until they contact an organisation such as Citizens Advice that this is actually available. So I think we've got a definite divide here on perhaps the ones that could do with some extra help, because their income may have been reduced purely because of what's happened in the last sort of 18 months. I mean, obviously, if we're speaking to them, we will go through all of the energy efficiency and the utility reductions and water reductions and, the priority registers, etc. But obviously, we're not speaking to everybody. And I think there's quite a huge amount of people that are missing out.
Yeah, so I think our takeaway from that is to go, as we use data share, which is naturally focused towards benefit, we end up with a smaller group that is then actually much harder to reach. And how you achieve that. I don't know if anybody else has got any thoughts on that particularly. Is it easier to actually contact people who are benefits based than non-benefits based? I suppose I would throw out there.
I just said, so I think the group we're talking about here are just about managing customers. That something could slightly tip them over the edge, for example. And one of the points throughout the CCW affordability review was very much about how we support people that maybe don't qualify for social tariff, because obviously there has to be a point, doesn't there, with anything with eligibility criteria, and there's always going to be people that will fall outside of that. So I think it's really important that we don't just focus on one solution, and that we do look to see if there are those other wider support solutions that are in place for those customers that might be enough for them. Even things like looking at income maximisation reviews as the service, instead of just discounting a bill, and sort of in a way it's sort of sticking a bit of a plaster on something, isn't it, unless you look at the drivers and try and fix the root cause of the problem for people. So I think doesn't help with the identification of who they are, but it does suggest that there could be alternative solutions for that group.
Yeah, absolutely. We had a couple of extra questions, didn't we, Adam, on the just on the next.
Yeah, see if I can drag those over potentially.
I'm just thinking we had multiple Jamboards and limited time now, haven't we? And,
yes.
have we got a second question? How can we work together?
Oh, sorry, yeah.
Forward? Yeah. So I suppose what we started to do was then get into the what are the strategies required for. I think it's beyond that. Negative disposal income is, say, one type of customer characteristic. Then I think what we're really saying is that you've then got a hard to reach group who are not, you know, and I think that's your bit, Jess, where you were saying they're customers who are very easily tipped, i.e. they might be just on the edge, not getting benefits, slightly higher income, but, you know, any sort of bill shock or, you know, like the current energy position is going to cause problems. So, you know, and I suppose we should look at that, you know, in the next, I don't know how long the energy problem is predicted to last, you know, but is that something we should be looking at?
Put some context to it. It looks like the price cap's reviewed every 6 months. It looks like the April price cap could be a rather substantial increase. This year was around £150. For the one in October, April's looking more like £550. So huge. And I don't think anybody's expecting it to be completely resolved by next winter. I don't think it's just a one winter thing. When I talk to our head of policy in NEA, he's very much of the mindset that this is going to span more than one winter.
What do people think that, I suppose I'm intrigued by what types of customers are, you know, what's the extent of how far up, I suppose, the affluency piece do you need to go I'm not impacted by that energy increase?
Just waiting to see if anybody else jumped in. One thing I would say is it's not always just down to affluency, because obviously we need to think about what people are spending. So it depends on how far people have pushed themselves, for one thing, because you could have people that have pushed and spend everything that they have, but are very affluent on paper. And therefore that is one group that could be quite affected by it. Something that we saw quite a lot of at the beginning of COVID, with people unable to afford mortgage payments on furlough when they were down to 80%. So there are quite a group of people that could be affected by that. Everyone will see an increase in their bill without a doubt. But in theory, in just over a year, we'd have seen it basically double for energy bills.
So I don't know if maybe Nikki from Northumbria, whether you're seeing anything particularly. You're off mute, but we can't hear you, Nikki.
Can you hear me now?
Can hear you, perfect.
Yeah, sorry, I'd hit the wrong button on the black box. My apologies. Hello, everybody. So we had, I was thinking about all the things we were just talking about, and I was thinking about efficiency, and I put a comment on, I know we're on number 2, but actually I put a comment on number 3 about how when we talk about affluent people and perhaps they're using lots of the product, if you like the water, that actually if we had an idea, Jess or the group did, about if there was a different tariff for people who had the money to use more water for better things that need more water, if you like, so your hot tubs or swimming pools or other things. And actually we then looked at higher tariffs to support lower tariffs for people that couldn't afford the basic of the product. So that was something that is in sort of the very early sort of discussion, which Jess was part of as well, which we were quite excited about, weren't we? Jess, you still with us?
Yes, I am.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, I was on mute.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. No, you're fine. No, definitely, we were excited about that. That's Nikki is referring to the Innovation Festival sprint that we did, and hopefully there'll be a summary paper that's published on that shortly. But looking at new ways of trying to fix the problem, so actually looking at tariffs rather than just the support that's offered.
Great. And anything?
Andy, wasn't that what South East Water did? I can remember being involved in the focus groups back at the very infancy of social tariffs, and I believe there was discussion over putting up everybody else's water bill by, I don't know, it was something minute, £3 at the time.
Yeah, so the way social tariff works at the moment, Rose, is effectively you go out with a design and you sort of get customer acceptance of that design and the amount that they'll need to cross subsidise. And yeah, that's exactly how it does happen. The whole of everybody's tariff just goes up by that, whatever that amount is. Be that right or wrong, and that's where it's different, I think, with the single social tariff, because it's, you know, I suppose removing the postcode lottery of our designs and etc. But I think this is more about almost the thing this is probably going to sound very wrong, but it's almost like the tax system. Effectively, those who can afford it pay more compared to or have who are using it beyond what we'd class as the essential, is probably where Nick is coming from and the Northumbrian sort of team.
It was a discussion around around rising block tariff and whether or not you could charge different amounts for different volumes of water. So if you do have those people that are using way more because of things like hot tubs and stuff, that they could be charged for that bit at a different level.
But how would you know it was hot tubs?
Sorry?
How would you know it was above essential? You know, because if they've got a very large family, that could cause more water poverty.
Yeah. You're right there, Rosie. There is a number of, just thinking Tracy from, I think you're Welsh Water, aren't you? Yeah. If you're there and able to talk. Tracy was having problems earlier, so oh, okay. I've just got a note to say we need to go back to the main room now. So sorry, we didn't get much time to talk as much as we could have. Always one of the things, but